She gave up her seat for a burned man. 1 week later, the president showed up.
Hello everyone, enjoy these relaxing moments while you watch.
Sarah Walker sat blankly by the window, a gentle smile on her lips as she ran her fingers over the first-class plane ticket she had just won in an American Airlines raffle. "I can't believe it," she murmured. After so many years of living simply, this was the first time Sarah had the chance to experience luxury. Her flight to Savannah for her best friend Lily Parker's wedding suddenly felt more thrilling than ever. That morning, she left her small apartment in Brooklyn, carefully wrapping her old suitcase in plastic. "Sarah, take care of yourself," called out her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Scott, waving from the ground floor window. "I'll only be gone for 3 days." Sarah replied with a smile, her heart full of anticipation. At JFK International Airport, the first-class check-in area gleamed like a luxury hotel. Sarah stepped in, a little hesitant. Well-dressed passengers in suits and expensive dresses brushed past her with indifferent glances. She reminded herself, "It's okay. I have a ticket." After checking in, Sarah sat in the waiting area and took out a picture book drawn by the kids at the preschool. They had given it to her after their last class before the short break. The scribbled drawings made her smile fondly. When boarding time arrived, Sarah was allowed to board first. It was her first time stepping into a first-class cabin. Spacious seats like armchairs, personal entertainment screens, warm scented towels, everything was perfect. As she was admiring the surroundings, she heard whispers behind her. Turning around, Sarah saw an old man, likely over 70, frail, with stained sleeves and a face disfigured by severe burns. He was trembling as he clutched the handrail, limping along with the economy group. A young flight attendant, Daniel Morgan, whispered to his colleague, "Miss Isabel, that man looks like he needs help." Isabel Reed, the head attendant, shrugged coldly, "Economy has seats. Leave him be." Sarah frowned. She saw the old man coughing harshly, his face wrinkled in pain, but no one, neither the passengers nor the crew, seemed to care. A woman in a fur coat, Mrs. Evans, stepped back away from him, wrinkling her nose and muttering, "God, how filthy." Without hesitation, Sarah stood up and quickly approached Daniel Morgan. "Excuse me, I'd like to give up my seat for him." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, are you sure? You have a first-class ticket." Sarah nodded firmly, "I'm sure. My seat isn't more important than his comfort." Isabel Reed gave Sarah a disapproving look from head to toe. "Trying to look virtuous in front of everyone, huh?" she muttered just loud enough. Sarah blushed but didn't back down. She gently took the old man's fragile arm and said softly, "Sir, please sit here. This is my seat." The old man looked confused, but gratitude flickered in his cloudy eyes. Thank you, young lady," he said hoarsely. Sarah nodded and walked to the back of the plane, near the restroom. The seat was cramped, with a faint musty smell. A young man in a black tracksuit, Ryan Carter, was filming with his phone, whispering to his friend, "Look at that. She's putting on a show. Faking kindness is the trend now, huh?" Sarah lowered her head, pretending not to hear. She hugged her small backpack tightly and told herself, "I did the right thing." The plane took off. The roar of the engine drowned out the whispers. Sarah closed her eyes, trying to drift to sleep. But minutes later, she realized the people around her were sneaking glances, whispering again. A plump middle-aged woman, Mrs. Bennett, murmured to her husband, "She probably thinks this'll get her on TV." The young man in the opposite row, Tyler Grant, scoffed, "Just another attention-seeking phony." A mocking chuckle came from Isabel Reed as she walked by checking tickets. She stopped in front of Sarah, her voice cold, "Excuse me, may I see your ticket again?" Sarah awkwardly pulled it out. Isabel examined it closely, then nodded with sarcasm. "Oh, it is a first-class ticket. And yet you'd rather mingle with the common folk? Or was it all just a performance?" Some passengers chuckled quietly. Sarah clenched the ticket tightly, her face burning. She felt exposed, naked among a sea of indifference and cruelty. When the flight attendant served drinks, Sarah received a lukewarm cup of water, while others had orange juice and hot coffee. Daniel Morgan glanced at her with sympathy, but Isabel's dagger-like eyes stopped him. Ryan Carter kept filming secretly, adding a voiceover, the fake Samaritan exposed mid-flight. All for fame, not kindness. Sarah turned her face to the tiny window, hiding the tears threatening to fall. She clenched her fists and tried to steady herself. I did this out of kindness. Not for fame. Not for anyone else. But the cold silence and the snickering around her cut into Sarah like razor blades. Then came the announcement, the plane is descending. Please fasten your seatbelts. Sarah let out a quiet breath. She just wanted the flight to be over. The plane landed at Savannah Airport. Passengers stood up to retrieve their luggage. Sarah stayed seated, hoping to avoid the crowd. As she slowly pulled her suitcase and backpack down the aisle, Ryan Carter pointed his phone straight at her, pretending to speak loudly. Hey, Miss Pretend Altruism. Smile for the camera. A burst of laughter from a group of young people behind made Sarah freeze. She lowered her head and quickly stepped off the plane, tears welling but forced back. At the baggage claim area, she stood off to one side, avoiding stares. A cold breeze from the automatic doors made her shiver. A message popped up from Lily Parker. Have you arrived? The wedding is about to start. Don't be late. Sarah gripped her phone, took a deep breath. She needed to grab her suitcase and head to the hotel to change. But just then, something unexpected happened. 3 airport security officers approached her, faces serious. Miss Sarah Walker, one of them asked. Yes, she replied hesitantly. Please come with us. There's a complaint regarding your plane ticket. Sarah froze. Her suitcase slipped from her hand. People nearby stopped and began murmuring. There. Told you she was fake, a woman's voice rang out. She tried to speak, but no words came out. Sarah was led into a small, cold room lit by pale fluorescent lights. A metal table, 2 stiff chairs. She sat down, fingers tightly intertwined, trying to keep them from shaking. A security officer, Mr. Hunter Cole, opened a thick file, his voice cold. Someone reported you for fraudulently obtaining a first-class seat. I didn't. I just gave up my seat to an elderly man, Sarah mumbled, choking on her words. Hunter Cole glanced at his colleague, a middle-aged woman named Ms. Palmer, then tapped his fingers on the table. Do you have any proof of your claim? Sarah bit her lip. All she had was the ticket stub, now confiscated by Isabel Reed. She took out her ID and baggage claim receipt, hands trembling. Palmer sighed in exasperation. Miss, do you know impersonation or fraud on a flight can lead to criminal charges? Sarah panicked. Tears spilled over. I swear. I didn't do anything wrong. The door slammed open. A man in a gray suit entered the airport supervisor, Mr. Liam Walker. He handed a phone to Hunter Cole. We just received a video. Sarah looked up, heart pounding. Liam Walker played the footage. It showed her standing in first class, speaking with the attendant, then leading the old man to the seat. But dubbed over the video was Ryan Carter's sneering voice, fake Samaritan trying to get on TV. A phony mask of kindness. Palmer shook her head, as if concluding the matter. Hunter Cole wrote in the report, serious misconduct requiring further investigation. Sarah sobbed. No, that's not true. I just wanted to help him. I really had the VIP ticket. Liam Walker shrugged indifferently, the world doesn't run on kindness, ma'am. They held her for nearly 2 more hours, questioning, recording statements. Finally, after confirming her documents didn't show major discrepancies, they let her go with a warning. We'll be keeping an eye on you. Sarah dragged herself out of the security room, feeling like a temporarily released prisoner. The airport was quiet. The crowd had dispersed. She pulled her suitcase along, hollow inside. Her phone buzzed non-stop in her pocket. She opened it. Notifications flooded in from Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Sarah tapped on a trending post. Preschool teacher fakes kindness for fame. Shocking scandal. Attached was the secretly recorded video of her on the plane. Comments were rolling in by the second. Textbook fake kindness. Putting on a show for attention, disgraceful. She probably wants sponsorships or brand deals. Angel costume, devil heart. Sarah's hands trembled, almost letting the phone drop to the floor. But it was like she was hypnotized. She couldn't stop reading. A popular account, at American Eye, had posted an analysis, signs that Sarah Walker staged an act of kindness to boost her image. Below the post, thousands of shares and scathing comments. No one asked what had really happened. No one wanted to know. Sarah saw a message from Lily Parker. "Where are you? What are you doing? The whole country is talking about you." She wanted to explain but didn't know where to start. Any attempt at justification now would only make her look like she was making excuses. Another message came in from a former colleague, Ms. Paige Dawson. "Sarah, I'm sorry, but I can't stay in touch. The school has asked us to cut ties with anyone damaging its image." Sarah was stunned. She rushed out of the airport and hailed a cab to the hotel. On the ride, the car radio was playing the news. The case of teacher Sarah Walker. Netizens demand strict consequences for her betrayal of public trust. The driver, a middle-aged man named Michael Simmons, shook his head. Shameful. Young people nowadays just want views and likes with their silly social media stunts. Sarah covered her face, tears streaming uncontrollably. At the hotel, she checked in looking utterly drained. The receptionist, Mrs. Karen Harris, glanced at her with a cold expression. No greeting. The room was small and cold. Sarah opened her suitcase and discovered her party dress was missing. Only a few crumpled pajamas remained. She collapsed onto the floor and cried loudly. Her phone buzzed again. "Lily Parker, you don't need to come to the wedding anymore. I don't want to be associated with this." "Mom, Sarah, what's going on? The neighbors are gossiping like crazy." Sarah felt like the whole world had turned against her. She turned on the TV in the hotel room, and her own image appeared on the local news footage of her curled up in the back of the plane, overlaid with a harsh, judgmental headline. A reporter interviewed Isabel Reed. She was clearly trying to get famous by staging a performance. "I witnessed the whole thing." A clip of Daniel Morgan was also aired. I'm not sure, but it did seem like she wanted attention." Sarah shut her eyes tightly. She hadn't expected even the young flight attendant to abandon her. The phone rang. An unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A sharp female voice came through. "Hello, this is Anna Robinson, reporter from the New York Times. We'd like to interview you about the scandal. Do you have any comments?" Sarah stammered. I don't have anything to say." Anna Robinson scoffed. "No comment is fine. The public's already made up its mind." Click. The call ended. Sarah threw her phone onto the bed and sobbed uncontrollably into her hands. Mocking voices echoed in her head. Condemning stares pierced through her memory. Surrounded by invisible hatred, she felt herself sinking into a dark abyss. That night, Sarah tossed and turned. The nightmares repeated themselves, getting kicked off the plane, people pointing and laughing. At 3 a.m., she sat on the floor by the window, eyes hollow from crying. Outside, the lights of Savannah blurred through her tears. No one believed her. No one wanted to hear her side. Only loneliness and shame clung tightly to her fragile heart. The next morning, sunlight flooded the small room, but for Sarah Walker, the world was painted in ash gray. She had been awake all night, her mind empty. Her phone alarm went off, Lily Parker's wedding, 10 a.m. Sarah slowly got up and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face was swollen from crying, dark circles under her eyes. She rummaged through her suitcase one last time, desperately hoping to find the dress. But all that remained was a wrinkled t-shirt and a pair of faded jeans. No. This can't be, she whispered, her voice cracking. She put on the old clothes, hastily tied her hair back, and rushed out of the hotel, catching a cab to the wedding venue. On the way, the driver, Mr. Nathan Ford, turned on the radio. A news report was playing. Sarah Walker scandal, social media outrage continues. Calls for her teaching license to be revoked. Nathan glanced at the rearview mirror, recognizing her. He smirked. You look like that Walker lady, don't you? Sarah lowered her head, saying nothing. When she arrived, she froze at the sight of the lavish outdoor wedding. White curtains, roses along the aisle, soft music in the air. Guests in elegant outfits sipped champagne and chatted merrily. Sarah walked among curious glances. Some guests recognized her and began whispering. That's her. The fake saint. Trying to be famous, huh? Lily invited her. Embarrassing to have a friend like that. She swallowed hard and tried to move forward. But Lily Parker, radiant in her white wedding gown, stepped in front of her. Sarah, Lily said coldly. I told you not to come. Sarah trembled. Lily. I wanted to congratulate you. Lily crossed her arms, eyes like ice. Did you think your presence would make my wedding better? You're being cursed by the whole country right now. A few guests snickered. Sarah felt utterly exposed. Lily's voice turned sharp. I don't want your scandal ruining my big day. Please, leave. Sarah bit her lip until it bled. She nodded, turned, and walked away pierced by whispers and contemptuous stares like knives in her back. She ran outside, tears spilling out again. She ran along the cobblestone street, not knowing where she was going. Eventually, Sarah collapsed onto a bench in an empty park. The wind blew cold, scattering broken petals in the air. Her phone buzzed. Mom, sweetheart, the neighbors are saying terrible things. We're so ashamed. They say you've brought disgrace to the whole town. Another message, from an unknown number. Liar. Get out of New York. Sarah sobbed, clutching her hands tightly. No one was on her side. No one believed her. The sun began to set. She dragged herself back to the hotel. At the front desk, Karen Harris handed her a paper coldly. Your luggage couldn't be found. The airline refuses to compensate due to an ongoing investigation involving you. Sarah was stunned. But I need clothes. Karen replied curtly, we're not responsible. Sarah turned away, stifling a sob. In the elevator, a couple whispered in American English but she heard every word. That's Sarah Walker. God, why is the hotel letting her stay here? Back in her room, Sarah slammed the door and gasped as if she had just finished a marathon. She collapsed onto the bed, holding her head. The phone rang again. Another unknown number. She didn't want to answer but she picked it up anyway. Ms. Walker, a cold male voice said. This is Jason Scott, attorney for American Airlines. My client is requesting a written statement regarding your actions and the damage to the company's image within 48 hours. If not, we will proceed with legal action. Sarah was speechless. But I didn't do anything wrong. Jason replied indifferently. We only care about reputational damage. No one is interested in the truth. Click. Sarah let the phone fall to the floor and clutched her chest. She couldn't even feel her own heartbeat anymore. Everything was collapsing. A knock on the door startled her. She opened it to find a hotel staff member with a cold expression. "We received complaints from other guests about your presence. Please limit your movements on the premises." Sarah nodded silently. That night, she sat alone by the window, looking down at the glittering streets of Savannah. But to her, those lights were nothing more than a staged illusion. More news broke. Hopeway Preschool suspends teacher Sarah Walker. President of the United States expresses concern about the rise of fake kindness in today's society. She recalled the grateful look in the old man's eyes on the plane, the tremble in his handshake. He was the only one who had believed her. But where was he now? She didn't know. Maybe he had forgotten her already. Dark clouds gathered over Savannah's night sky. Sarah pulled a thin blanket over her head, trying to fend off the despair devouring her. A cold wind slipped through the window crack. Outside, the streetlights flickered, as if about to go out. In the darkness, Sarah whispered, "I wish I had never given up my seat." The words vanished into nothingness. No one heard. No one replied. Only darkness and the cruelty of the world closed in around her. The night train carried Sarah Walker back to New York in a chilling silence. She sat curled up by the window, clutching her old, torn backpack tightly. The dim light cast a pale glow on her hollow cheeks and sunken eyes. She didn't dare open her phone anymore. The hateful messages, the insults, each one felt like a dagger to the heart. The train pulled into Grand Central Station at 3 a.m. The city lay still, broken only by the rattle of a garbage truck outside. Sarah dragged her feet along the freezing sidewalk back to her tiny rented room in Brooklyn. The key rattled in the lock as she opened the door. The dark room greeted her like a tomb. Sarah let her backpack fall to the ground, leaned back against the wall, and slid down to the cold floor. She didn't know how long she sat there. When the morning light seeped through the window blinds, her phone buzzed again. A message from the principal of Hopeway Preschool, Mr. Thomas Bennett. "Sarah, as requested by the Department of Education, you are suspended pending investigation. Please wait for an official notice." She opened her laptop. Local news sites were flooded with headlines. "Teacher Walker, a dark stain on our education system. Parents demand the dismissal of Sarah Walker." Beneath the articles, thousands of furious comments. "We can't let someone so fake teach our children. Fire her immediately." Sarah felt like she was being publicly executed with no lawyer, no chance to defend herself. Only a death sentence handed down by invisible keyboards. A message from a student's parent popped up. "I won't let my little girl near a fraud like you." Sarah closed the laptop, her hands trembling. The next morning, she received a call from her mother, Mrs. Laura Walker. "It's me, Sarah," her mother's voice trembled. "The neighbors are gossiping. They say you've shamed the whole family." She could hear her father, Mr. Caleb Walker, sigh heavily in the background. "We don't believe what they say, sweetheart," her mother continued, her voice breaking. "But, in a small town like this, rumors spread fast. People are starting to avoid us." Sarah bit her lip, tears falling down her cheeks. "Mom, I'm sorry," she sobbed. "No, it's not your fault," her mother said, but her voice faded like a distant echo. The call ended. Sarah sat on the floor, hugging her head, crying silently. The next day, she mustered the courage to go outside to buy some food. When she walked into the small corner supermarket, familiar faces like Mrs. Logan and Mr. Andrew turned away, pretending not to see her. A little boy, Matthew Simmons, pointed at her and said, "Mom, that's the bad teacher." The mother pulled him away without even glancing at Sarah. She felt like a monster. Sarah hurried back to her room and slammed the door shut, locking herself inside the darkness. She rummaged through a drawer and pulled out an old journal. The yellowed pages held beautiful memories: the day she graduated from teaching school, her first day on the job, crayon drawings from students who adored her. I used to dream I could change the world with kindness, Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. But the world crushed me instead. She hugged the journal to her chest, overwhelmed by a deep and rising despair. That night, a photo went viral on social media, Sarah sitting hunched on a park bench, her eyes vacant. The caption read, "The price of false kindness." Thousands of shares, thousands of cruel comments. The account at City of Justice Anna wrote, "No mercy for those who exploit people's trust." The hashtag Fake Sarah was trending on Twitter. Sarah no longer dared to go outside. She locked the door, pulled the curtains shut. Each day passed like a sentence. She woke with dread, ate only dry bread and water, and sat silently, staring at the wall. Her phone buzzed constantly, threats, mockery, relentless harassment. Sarah was so exhausted she just wanted to disappear from the world. One morning, she woke and realized, her faith in people, in society, in herself was gone. She whispered in the dark. No one values kindness anymore. No one believes in good. She was nothing but a lost ghost in a city that once felt like home but had turned into hell. Sarah stood before the mirror and saw a worn-out woman, disheveled hair, lifeless eyes. She whispered to her reflection. "Who are you? This isn't Sarah Walker anymore." She opened her wardrobe. Only a few ragged clothes remained. Sarah pulled out a thin coat, put it on, and sat at the table. There was a blank sheet of paper. She picked up a pen and scribbled. "I'm sorry. I believed kindness could change the world. I was wrong." But then she crumpled the paper and threw it into the corner. No. She couldn't give up like this. Sarah opened her backpack and took out her old wallet. Inside were just a few loose dollar bills. She made a decision: sell her phone, cut off the internet, leave New York, a city that once was home, now only hell. She found a small phone shop down an alley. The owner, Mr. Alexander Morgan, eyed her warily. "You want to sell your phone?" he asked. "Yes," Sarah replied, her voice hoarse. Alexander turned the phone over and frowned. "Too old. I can only give you $50. Sarah nodded. No negotiation. With the meager cash in hand, she went to a nearby internet cafe. She paid in cash to use an old computer. She quickly typed into the search bar, "Quiet, affordable small towns in the U.S." A list appeared: Fairfield, Ashland, Dover. Sarah randomly picked a name somewhere far away, somewhere unfamiliar, where no one knew who she was. She booked a bus ticket for the next day. A dawn departure. As she left the cafe, Sarah felt a strange emptiness. No more messages. No more followers. No one left to lose. Her final night in New York, she packed what little she had. One small suitcase with a few old clothes, a children's textbook, and a drawing from little Madeline Parker, a picture of teacher Sarah with a glowing halo over her head. Sarah gently touched the drawing, tears falling silently. She placed it carefully inside her suitcase. At dawn, the alarm rang. Sarah slung her backpack over her shoulder, pulled the suitcase out of the apartment. She looked around one last time. The tiny, worn-out room that once held laughter and dreams now held only painful memories. She locked the door and stepped onto the street. New York's morning air was chilly, blanketed in mist. Old buildings stood silently. Sarah pulled her collar high and walked quickly toward the bus terminal. On the way, she passed a bar. The TV inside was airing the morning news. Sarah Walker, Society's Judgment for Fake Kindness. She quickened her pace, unwilling to hear more. Newspapers lined the sidewalk, her face splashed across the front pages with mocking headlines. Sarah Walker's Fake Smile. A lesson in foolish trust and misguided kindness. Sarah lowered her head, avoiding eye contact. An elderly flower seller, Mrs. Beth Sullivan, saw her and sneered. God bless those who know shame. Sarah gripped her backpack tighter, pain shooting through her chest. Finally, the bus terminal came into view. A chaotic place filled with noisy passengers, honking buses, and the pungent smell of diesel. She found the platform for the Dover route. A worn-out blue and white bus waited there, engine sputtering. Sarah approached and bought a one-way ticket. The ticket seller, Martha Carter, gave her a blank look. She didn't recognize her. That brought Sarah a bit of relief. She sat down on a bench, suitcase beside her. The sky was gray, the wind biting. Sarah watched the raindrops slide down the roof edge. Her heart was empty. No more expectations. No more dreams. No more hope. Only one desire remained, to disappear, to be forgotten. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself. Just get out of here. Just start over from zero. Somewhere no one knows who Sarah Walker is. The loudspeaker crackled. Dover-bound bus now boarding. Passengers, please proceed to the platform. Sarah took a deep breath. She stood, grabbed her suitcase, and stepped toward the waiting bus. She didn't know what lay ahead. She didn't know what the future held. But she had nothing left to lose. Sarah Walker boarded the old bus, her small suitcase rattling across the floor. No one noticed her, just another stranger, blending into the faceless crowd of New York. She found a seat near the back by the window. Outside, a fine drizzle fell, blanketing the city in a dreary mist. Sarah set her suitcase down by her feet and pulled a crumpled bus ticket from her coat pocket. She stared at it as if clinging to the last remnants of her old life. The bus started moving. The city of New York slowly receded behind the fogged-up window. Inside the bus, passengers sat quietly, lost in their own worlds. An elderly couple whispered to each other. A college student nodded to the rhythm of his music with headphones on. A young mother rocked a sleeping baby in her arms. Sarah hugged her backpack tightly, trying to make herself as small as possible. Her head throbbed with shouting voices, harsh criticisms. She closed her eyes, but images from the internet, cruel news articles, and contemptuous stares flashed vividly before her. I just wanted to help someone, she whispered to herself. But the only response was the steady hum of the engine and the soft patter of rain on the bus roof. The bus stopped at a small station on the edge of the city. Some passengers got off. A blast of cold wind swept into the bus as the doors opened. Sarah tightened her coat and shivered. An elderly woman with a hunched back, Mrs. Frances Newton, boarded the bus, slowly shuffling to find a seat. No one offered theirs. Sarah stood up and offered her seat. "Thank you, kind girl," the old woman said with a gentle smile. Sarah only nodded and sat down on the floor, leaning against the wall of the bus. No one noticed. No one cared. A cell phone rang somewhere in the back. Sarah flinched. Out of habit, she reached into her coat pocket, then remembered she had sold her phone. She had completely severed ties with her old world. No messages. No calls. No social media. No one left. The bus continued on into the suburbs. Bare fields and quiet little towns slid past the window. Sarah thought to herself, in a place like this, no one knows me. No one hates me. I can start over. But then, a voice echoed coldly and cruelly in her head. Will the new world accept someone already rejected by society? She shuddered. The bus stopped at a rest area. The driver, Mr. Ethan Miller, announced, 15-minute break. Passengers got off one by one. Sarah stepped out, dragging her suitcase behind her. The rest area was nearly empty. A small coffee stand, a few rickety wooden tables. She sat at an empty one and ordered a black coffee. The server, a young woman named Natalie Foster, placed the cup in front of her without even looking up. Sarah sat in silence, her freezing hands wrapped around the warm cup. She overheard a conversation at the next table. "Did you hear about that fake teacher who staged everything for fame? Disgusting. I don't understand how someone like that even exists." Sarah lowered her head, her heart tightening. Even after leaving New York, even after cutting ties with the internet, her reputation haunted her every step. She left a few coins on the table and pulled her suitcase back to the bus. Rain began to pour harder. Sarah sat in her old seat, staring out the rain-smeared window. Suddenly, she noticed a newspaper someone had left on the seat beside her. A bold headline jumped out at her. "Sarah Walker, a cautionary tale of innocent misjudgment." She gripped the edge of the seat, her fingernails digging into the hard plastic. Tears welled up, but she held them back. The bus started moving again. The streetlights faded into the distance, blurring in the rain. An hour later, the bus stopped in a tiny town. The driver called out loudly, "Dover. Final stop." Sarah pulled her suitcase off the bus and stepped into the muddy ground. The town was shrouded in fog and darkness. A few low houses were scattered around, their dim yellow lights flickering faintly. She walked slowly, each step feeling like it carried the weight of dozens of pounds. No one welcomed her. No one awaited her. Only rain and the howling wind down empty alleys. Sarah found an old motel named Sunset Motel, its rotting wooden sign hanging crookedly. The motel owner, Mrs. Teresa Anderson, gave her a blank look and handed her a registration form. "ID?" Sarah rummaged through her backpack and handed over her ID card. Teresa glanced at it and nodded. "Room 3, second floor. Rent's paid up front." Sarah handed over the last money she had in her wallet. She climbed the creaky stairs and opened the door to a damp room, mold growing in the corners. A single bed, a wobbly table, a tiny window. She set her suitcase down and slumped onto the bed. The room was eerily silent. She looked out the window. Rain still poured heavily outside. Streetlights cast distorted shadows on the wall opposite. She took out a child's drawing from her suitcase, one drawn by little Madeline. Crude crayon strokes depicted a smiling teacher with a bright yellow halo above her head. Sarah gently brushed her fingers across the drawing as tears fell silently. She whispered, "Madeline." Miss Sarah failed. The drawing blurred under her tears. She folded it and put it away in the desk drawer. Her whole body trembled with cold and despair. She pulled the blanket over her head, curling up like an abandoned child. Outside, thunder cracked across the night sky. Her heart clenched. A dull ache spread through her chest. She had left everything behind: family, friends, her career, the city she loved. Now, she had only herself and the crushing loneliness. Darkness enveloped her. The rain outside hadn't stopped. The next morning, Sarah Walker woke as gray light filtered through the tiny window. She rubbed her eyes, her body stiff from a sleepless night. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles on the bumpy street. The cold seeped into every layer of her clothing. Sarah slowly got up and packed a few things into her suitcase: old jeans, a thin coat, a few worn-out books, and the small drawing tucked inside a folder. She glanced at the wall clock. It was almost 7 a.m. The town of Dover was still asleep in a blanket of fog. Sarah slung her backpack over her shoulder, dragged her suitcase down the stairs. The motel owner, Teresa Anderson, was wiping the reception desk. She looked up with a disinterested glance. "Leaving early?" she asked in a tired voice. Sarah nodded slightly. "I need to find a job." Teresa shrugged. "Not much work for strangers around here. You should know that." Without replying, Sarah pushed the door open and stepped outside. The early morning wind was sharp and biting. She pulled her collar up, her hand gripping the suitcase handle tightly. Wandering down the stone-paved street, Sarah felt like each step sank into an invisible layer of mud, the mud of failure and despair. She stopped at a small cafe and ordered a black coffee. The owner, Mr. John Parker, looked at her with suspicion. "From New York?" he asked. Sarah nodded. "Heard there's a big scandal going on up there. Some teacher or something," he muttered while wiping a table. Sarah lowered her gaze and didn't respond. She sat alone in the corner, sipping cold coffee, listening to fragmented gossip swirling around her. Even far from New York, the aftermath of disaster clung to her like a shadow. Leaving the cafe, she went door to door at the small shops along the street, asking for work. But rejection came again and again. "We're not hiring. Sorry, locals only. You should try in a bigger city." Sarah felt like every door, every corner, was pushing her away. The sky cleared gradually, but inside her, a storm was raging. She walked along a small stream cutting through the town and sat down on a moss-covered rock. The icy water flowed gently, reflecting the image of a worn-out woman. Sarah saw herself, lifeless eyes, matted hair, a face shaded with hopelessness. She remembered the days when she stood in front of her classroom, those admiring eyes of the children. She remembered the bursts of laughter in the schoolyard. The afternoons spent with colleagues preparing lessons, sharing jokes. Now, they were nothing but bitter memories. A bus horn blared in the distance, snapping her back to the present. Sarah stood up and, swaying slightly, dragged her suitcase onward. She made her way to the town hall to ask about jobs. An office worker, Maya Ross, glanced at Sarah's sparse resume and shook her head. "There's no position available for you. If you need work, you could try doing seasonal labor on the farms outside town." Sarah swallowed hard, trying to hide her disappointment. "Thank you." She wandered to the local market. The scent of ripe fruit, fresh vegetables, and toasted bread filled the air. But her wallet was completely empty. Sarah sat down on a rotting wooden bench, watching the townspeople bustling about, buying and selling, chatting and laughing. She was an outsider. A payphone rang from a corner of the market. A little blonde girl ran up and picked up the receiver. The image pierced Sarah's heart. She thought of Madeline Parker, her former student with the angelic smile. Madeline once hugged her tightly and whispered, "Miss Sarah, you're the best person in the world." But now, the world had branded her a fraud. Sarah leaned her head back against the bench and closed her eyes. A weak ray of sunlight pierced through the fog and touched her face, but it wasn't enough to warm her. When she opened her eyes, she saw a group of young people gathered nearby, excitedly talking, phones in hand. She overheard fragments. "That teacher case, there's a new update. Looks like there's a lawsuit going on." Sarah turned away, her heart tightening. Even after fleeing hundreds of miles, the past clung to her like a shadow. She stood up and dragged herself back to the motel. The sky was gray, heavy like a stone pressing on her chest. Back in her room, she slammed the door shut and leaned against the wall. In the damp room, the wind howled through the window cracks like mournful cries. Sarah buried her face in her hands and sobbed uncontrollably. She had tried. Tried to run. Tried to start over. But this world cold and cruel wouldn't let her forget. She opened her suitcase and took out Madeline's drawing. Once again, she gently traced the child's messy lines. A teardrop fell on the drawing, smudging the golden halo above the teacher's head. Sarah whispered, "I'm sorry. I couldn't protect kindness." Outside, the soft patter of rain began again. The raindrops tapped gently on the tin roof. She pulled the blanket over her head, curling up like a frightened child. In the darkness, a dark thought crept in. Maybe it's better this way, maybe I should just end it all. Her hand trembled as she reached into the drawer for the bottle of sleeping pills. Just close her eyes. Just fall asleep. Just forget everything. But then, there was a knock at the door. Sarah froze. Once. Twice. 3 times. The knocking was persistent, rhythmic. She didn't move. Who could possibly be looking for her in such a remote place? The knocking came again, louder this time. Sarah took a deep breath, lowered the blanket, and stepped toward the door. Her hand trembled as it gripped the doorknob. A warm, calm male voice called from outside. "Miss Sarah Walker, please open the door. We're here for you." She went still. The world that had seemed to turn its back on her, was now knocking once again. The knocking continued, steady. Sarah Walker stood frozen in the damp motel room, her hand clenched tightly around the doorknob, her whole body trembling. The voice came again. "Miss Sarah Walker, please open the door. We've come to see you." Sarah took a deep breath, her heart pounding. With all the courage she had left, she turned the knob and opened the door slightly. Before her stood a scene beyond imagination. A line of black cars filled the narrow street. Standing directly in front of her was a well-dressed middle-aged man, accompanied by an elderly gentleman someone Sarah recognized instantly. The elderly man with the burn-scarred face, the man to whom she had given her seat on that fateful flight. But today, he looked much healthier. Though his skin still bore some marks, his eyes sparkled with joy. "Sarah Walker," the old man said, his voice trembling with emotion, "we finally found you." Sarah's mouth fell open. She couldn't believe her eyes. The man beside the elderly gentleman stepped forward and extended his hand. "Hello, I'm Robert Evans, the President of the United States." She stepped back in shock, nearly losing her balance. "The President? We're here to thank you," he continued, his gaze sincere. "And to correct the wrongs that have been said about you." Sarah was speechless, overwhelmed with emotion. The old man grasped her hand firmly. "I'm Mark Evans, the President's father. I've kept my identity hidden for years. But when you gave me your seat, when you chose kindness over personal gain, and then were mocked and accused, I knew I couldn't stay silent any longer." Sarah's voice shook. I just did what my heart told me was right." Mark chuckled, tears streaming down his cheeks. "And that's why you deserve for the whole world to know your kindness was real." A group of reporters from afar recorded the moment, but there was no pushing, no chaos. They kept a respectful distance. President Robert Evans continued. "Sarah, today, in front of the nation, I want to offer you a formal apology." He gave a signal. A security officer opened the door of one of the black cars. Out came an elegant wooden box. Robert opened it to reveal the Medal of Distinguished Citizenship, the highest honor awarded to citizens for extraordinary deeds. "Miss Sarah Walker," he said solemnly, "with your compassion and courage in a cold world, you reminded us that kindness still exists." Sarah stood frozen. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Mark Evans held her hand tightly and whispered, "You deserve this more than anyone." Applause erupted from the crowd of townspeople who had gathered. Even Teresa Anderson, the cold motel owner from the day before, stood wide-eyed, awkwardly clapping. Sarah choked up. I don't know what to say." Robert smiled. "Just accept it as a heartfelt thank you." He pinned the medal onto Sarah's coat. Camera shutters flashed. The sound of applause filled the little street. Sarah clutched the medal, feeling as if a long nightmare had finally come to an end. Mark patted her shoulder. "There's one more thing." He handed her a folder. "The government will sponsor the founding of a preschool, one filled with hope. And you will be the headmistress." Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. "The school will be called Hope Springs Preschool," Robert added, "because you've restored our faith." Sarah burst into tears, not of despair this time, but of pure joy. A reporter approached her and asked, "Sarah, do you have anything to say to those who criticized you?" Sarah wiped her tears and smiled. "I don't blame them. I just hope that one day, they'll believe in kindness too." The crowd fell silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. In the crowd, Sarah suddenly spotted a familiar face: Daniel Morgan, the young flight attendant who once turned his back on her. Daniel stepped forward and bowed his head. "Sarah. I'm so sorry. I stayed silent when I should have stood up for you." Sarah gently placed a hand on his shoulder. "It's okay. What matters is that you understand now." Daniel's eyes welled with tears. "Please, give me a chance to make it right. I'd be honored to work at Hope Springs Preschool." Sarah laughed through her tears. "Of course." In another corner, Isabel Reed, the senior flight attendant who had humiliated her, stood pale and pressed against a wall. The camera turned toward her, capturing her ashamed face. A reporter rushed over. "Ms. Reed, do you have anything to say to Sarah Walker?" Isabel stammered. I'm sorry. I was wrong." Sarah turned to her, her eyes calm. "Don't apologize to me. Apologize to your conscience." Isabel lowered her head, unable to look up. Sarah turned to Mark Evans and Robert Evans. "I don't know how to thank you." Robert gave her a warm smile. "Just live true to your heart, Sarah. That's the greatest thank you of all." The simple ceremony ended with resounding applause and radiant smiles. Standing amidst the warm crowd, Sarah, for the first time after months of hell, felt it completely. She had been seen. She had been trusted. She had been loved. She gripped the medal tightly and told herself, "No matter how cruel the world may be, as long as I hold on to kindness, the light will always find me." 3 months later, Hope Springs Preschool officially opened in a tree-lined neighborhood in southern New York. Sarah Walker stood in front of the new school gate, wearing her specially designed principal's uniform, a white blouse, a light blue blazer, and an elegant long skirt. On her chest gleamed the Medal of Distinguished Citizenship, a reminder of a journey full of tears but also glowing with hope. A large sign hung above the school gate read, "Principal, Sarah Walker." Below it, the motto, "Where kindness is planted every day." The school gates were wide open, welcoming a chorus of children laughing and running in. Their voices echoed joyfully across the sunlit new campus. Daniel Morgan, now the school's operations manager, stood next to Sarah, grinning. "Can you believe it?" Sarah beamed. "I know. Sometimes, miracles really do happen." A group of newly hired teachers, all deeply committed to the belief in education through love, came forward to greet Sarah. The school bell rang. The opening ceremony began. Sarah's family, her parents, Mr. Caleb and Mrs. Laura Walker, stood in the front row. Mr. Caleb teared up, while Mrs. Laura constantly dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief. President Robert Evans and his father, Mark Evans, also attended. As Sarah stepped up to the podium, all eyes turned to her. She took a deep breath and began, her voice clear and firm. "Today, we are not just opening a school. We are opening a belief. A belief that kindness, sincerity, and love can change the world." A wave of applause broke out. Sarah continued. "We will teach our children that even though life can sometimes be cruel, as long as we stay true to our good nature, the light will always find its way to us." Her gaze swept across the crowd, pausing on the little children sitting quietly on the grass, listening attentively. She smiled gently. "And hope will always sprout from the smallest of seeds." The ceremony ended with a colorful balloon release. Bright red, yellow, and blue balloons floated into the sky, carrying tiny dreams with them. Sarah stepped down and joined the crowd of children. A little blonde girl named Sophia James ran up and pressed a drawing into her hand. In the picture, Sophia had drawn a smiling teacher with a radiant halo around her head. Sophia looked up at Sarah with big, bright eyes. "Miss Sarah, this is you. You're the best person in the whole world." Sarah hugged Sophia tightly, happy tears shimmering in her eyes. "Thank you, my little angel." Beside them, Daniel Morgan wiped his eyes, moved. He whispered, Sarah, you turned pain into a miracle. Sarah clenched her hand gently, silently grateful for the dark days that had forged her into the best version of herself. In the weeks that followed, Hope Springs Preschool became a national phenomenon. Social media was flooded with photos of the school's lush green trees, classrooms filled with laughter. A new hashtag emerged. Sarah's Hope. The lesson of unconditional kindness spread across the country. Television interviews featured parents saying, "We want our children to be raised in an environment of compassion. Hope Springs Preschool has restored our faith in education." Sarah received thousands of thank you letters, small gifts from strangers. One day, she received a handwritten letter from Isabel Reed. The handwriting was shaky, full of remorse. "Sarah, I know an apology can't erase the pain I caused. But I truly regret everything. You taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Thank you for not letting the cruelty of the world extinguish your light." Sarah folded the letter and smiled. She held no hatred. She chose forgiveness. One late afternoon, after all the children had gone home, Sarah sat alone on a stone bench in the schoolyard. The sunset cast golden hues over the brand new school buildings. She opened her old journal and wrote on the last page. "Today, I understand this: kindness may be misunderstood, even crushed. But it will never die. Because it lives in every heart that still dares to believe. And as long as even one person believes in it, the world still has hope." Sarah looked up, gazing at the fiery red sky. A gentle breeze passed by, carrying the scent of newly planted lavender in the school garden. Soft footsteps approached from behind. Daniel Morgan appeared, holding 2 cups of hot coffee. "For the best teacher in America," he smiled, handing her a cup. Sarah laughed and took it. "Thank you, Daniel. For believing." He sat beside her, thoughtful. "Sarah, did you know? Your story made me want to change my life." She tilted her head and smiled. "Really?" Daniel nodded. "Before, I only thought of myself. But watching you stand tall, despite all the rumors, I realized the world needs more people like you." Sarah remained silent, her heart full of quiet joy. The sun sank behind the mountains, painting the sky a brilliant orange. She turned to Daniel and said softly, "Let's keep planting seeds of hope day by day." Daniel smiled. "And one day, we'll see a whole field in bloom." The two gently clinked their coffee cups together under the warm twilight. The story of Sarah Walker reminds us that true kindness may be misunderstood, even buried, but its value will always endure. Even when the world is cruel, as long as we remain sincere at heart, the light will find its way to us. Her perseverance and compassion not only helped her overcome adversity, but also inspired a wave of change in society. The greatest lesson is this: be kind not to be praised, but because it is what makes us truly beautiful and strong.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.